Let's see. All right, we got a couple more folks coming in. We'll get started. All right, I see a fellow Virginian, somebody from Ohio, West Virginia. Wow, thank you for joining us from all over. I think we will go ahead and get started. This is a brief webinar, which I hope is part of the attraction for you all. We're not taking up all of your night, but definitely don't want to waste too much time here at the beginning. So I'll just start with a quick introduction. My name is Emily Piontek. I'm the Energy Democracy Field Coordinator for Appalachian Voices in Virginia, and I'm joined here by Bree Nisley, a colleague in Tennessee, and I'll let her introduce herself when we get to a couple of slides down the road, if that sounds good, Bree. Okay, great. So some of you may be, well, first, actually, let me start with an overview of what we're going to be doing tonight. So quickly introduce you all to Appalachian Voices. I've seen a lot of you coming from all over the country. So in case you're not familiar with us, we'll do a brief intro there. Then Bree will go into kind of an overview of the history of rural electric cooperatives, what it is that makes them unique, and what it means to be a member owner of an electric co-op. Which is one of the reasons we hope many of you are here tonight, that you are member owners. And then I'll talk about 3 of the new federal programs for clean energy that cooperatives are eligible for. And then Bree will talk about the direct pay tax credits. And then we will spend hopefully the majority of this evening talking about how you can be reaching out to your cooperatives and talking to them about why these programs are important to you and how you can ensure that they are pursuing this historic federal funding opportunity. And then we'll also have some time for Q&A. So who we are, Appalachian Voices is a 501c3 environmental advocacy organization. We work primarily on energy sector issues in the Central Appalachian region. So this is kind of across the range of the energy sector. So starting at the top here, we fight new fossil fuels. We also fight for new clean energy being built and coming into the Central Appalachian region. We work to bring new economic opportunities to communities that have been impacted by the declining coal industry. And we also do some work to clean up after that industry, whether that's water quality monitoring of abandoned mines or existing mines, and making sure that abandoned mines are being reclaimed and restored, all the way to supporting miners who have black lung. We kind of work across that range of issues in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. And we actually celebrated our 25th anniversary in 2022, which was super exciting. So we got started fighting mountaintop removal in the late 1990s. And now here we are in 2023, fighting to bring some of this historic federal funding to our region. But again, the opportunities that we're talking about tonight aren't solely available to folks who live in the Appalachian region. I just want to clarify that because I did see in the chat that a lot of you were coming from all over the country. So if you're a cooperative member owner, this money, these opportunities could be for you and your utility. So with that quick introduction, I will turn things over to Bree.
Thank you, Emily. And I will go quick through this part. My name is Bree Nisley. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm based in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm our Tennessee program manager for Appalachian Voices. And I've been with the org for about 6 years, doing a lot of electric co-op work since I started. And if you join any webinar about opportunities for co-ops in the Inflation Reduction Act, you'll probably get some download of the history on how co-ops are structured and how they came about. And that's because a lot of that history is a pretty inspiring story. So there was like a 50-year gap or so between when cities in the US were electrified and rural communities. And that's because it wasn't as profitable to run electric lines in rural communities. And so for a very long time, rural areas didn't have power. In 1935, the Rural Electrification Act established rural electric cooperatives, and a year later, the Rural Electrification Administration was funded to help get those co-ops off the ground. And basically what happened was a very widespread community organizing movement happened across rural America, largely through farmers unions. They went around and got a $5 membership fee from member owners, and that paired with some funding from the Rural Electrification Administration helped establish all of these electric co-ops. And in many cases, rural community members actually ran their electric line themselves. And so there was just a rapid electrification of rural America because of that really strong organizing infrastructure. The Rural Electrification Administration is now called the Rural Utilities Service. It still exists today, just under a new name. And the Rural Utilities Service administers a lot of funding for rural electric cooperatives today. And the programs that we're going to talk to you all about that we won in the Inflation Reduction Act together actually amount to about $11 billion for 2 of the programs. And then there's another program that got a bump in funding. But some folks have done the math on this and compared that money today that we won in the Inflation Reduction Act to funding from back in the day when the REA was started. And the money in the Inflation Reduction Act is actually the biggest investment in rural electrification ever. So this really is a historic win and a huge opportunity. Okay, Emily. So when we're thinking about this opportunity for rural electric cooperatives to get access to this funding and implement clean energy, one of the reasons why it's so important that rural electric cooperatives got that funding is because rural electric co-ops, one, serve a huge portion of the landmass in the US. 56% of the landmass in the US gets their service from an electric co-op. So there's a lot of maps that show that. It's 42 million people. And also a lot of the persistent poverty counties in the US, in fact, like 92% of them get their power from rural electric cooperatives. So there's just really a big opportunity to make a big impact by bringing renewable energy programs into rural communities through these electric co-ops. Okay. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. All right. So co-ops have a pretty unique governance model. And if you look at the picture here on the screen, this was actually put together by a co-op member owner in Kentucky named Steve Wilkins, and he's a member of the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, KFTC, a really cool member-based organization. So in some places across the country, there are generation and transmission electric co-ops. These are big co-ops that have members that are distribution co-ops that actually take the power to member owners' houses or ratepayers' houses. They produce the electricity and then transmit it to the distribution co-ops here on the right, who then, have power lines, distribution lines that take that power to member owners' houses. Sometimes co-ops might get their power from a different type of entity, possibly an investor-owned utility like Duke or Dominion, or a public utility like the Tennessee Valley Authority. But regardless, there's sort of a separation between the generation utility and then the distribution electric co-ops. And so the programs that we're talking about today have eligibility for both types of co-ops. Similarly, you can see all these distribution co-ops, are getting their power from this co-op G&T. They also own it. You can kind of imagine a version of this, this graphic here that has member owners at the end of the line. So if you can imagine that these transmission lines at the end were actually member owners, they similarly own their electric co-op if it were a distribution co-op on this end. So if you pay a bill to an electric co-op, you're also a member and an owner. And co-ops were organized under 7 cooperative principles that include open and voluntary membership and democratic member control. So if you have an electric co-op that you get your power from, you also have a board of directors on that co-op who represent different districts of the co-op. And there's actually a meeting, an annual meeting that happens every year where you can vote on the board of directors. And other principles include cooperation among cooperatives, but also concern for community. And so the reason we talk about this background is because, again, the way co-ops started was a big organizing project. They're organized under democratic principles. If you pay a bill, you actually own that co-op. And all of this infrastructure is important for thinking about the renewable energy transition. There's a big opportunity today for rural communities to be organizing and using their co-op as a vehicle for improving quality of life. Okay, and so now I'm hoping that you all can go down to the polls and quizzes button on the bottom of your screen. If you all click on that, can you see a poll that says, are you a co-op member owner? Can people see that? Okay. Oh, has everyone answered? Okay. It says 27 people have answered, which is great. Oh, people answered when they joined. So, right. If you go down to the bottom of your screen, you should see a poll and quizzes button. Okay. Not sure what happened there. Is Emily still here? Okay. Sorry about that, everyone.
Sorry
Anyway,
about that, y'all.
Yeah.
My internet connection, I just got a notice that was unstable. So let me reload this screen real quick.
Thanks, Emily. Anyways, about half of the people who joined are member owners of co-ops, which is great. Some people were unsure, which you may know now if you're a member owner. But anyways, Emily will show you more about how to look at your co-op's website to find out more information later. But for now, I think we can go into talking about the funding opportunities.
Okay, cool. And just to check, can everybody see my screen again? Okay, awesome. Sorry about that blip. Cool. Thank you, Bree. So in the interest of time, I'm going to skim through these programs pretty quickly, but don't worry about that because we do have information, a 4-pager that has more info about each of these programs that we'll share afterwards. So we'll make sure the information is in front of you. But I want to start by talking about a brand new program called the New Era program. And this program provides nearly $10 billion strictly for both types of cooperatives that Bree was explaining with that graphic on the previous slide. So this is going to be for your generation and transmission co-ops, as well as the distribution co-ops that they provide power to. This is a new program. The primary goal of the New Era program is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So to fund a number of projects that are going to help these cooperatives do that. And do it in such a way that it doesn't require the co-op to pay for the entire program, which could then impact your bills as members of that cooperative. So the New Era program provides up to 25% of the project costs in loans or grants. This is a competitive program with a maximum of $970 million per award. So we expect to see a number of these going out. And the kinds of programs or kinds of projects that New Era can fund include renewable energy projects like building a utility scale solar system, building a solar system with storage. It also includes upgrading transmission lines and distribution lines so that you have really energy efficient transmission of energy. And that's just a couple of the kinds of projects that New Era would fund. And the application period is coming up. It's a very short window. There's only 30 days for a cooperative to apply for this program, and they can do that starting in July 31st, and then the application deadline will close on August 31st, which is part of the reason that we're pulling all of you here tonight, is just to emphasize the timeline, the scale of the programs, and the timeline that co-ops have to apply, and so hoping that you all can apply that pressure to make sure that they do. There are some resources that cooperatives can use to help us to assist them with this application process that we'll get into a little bit later. Something I wanted to say about New Era before moving on is that a part of the application process requires the utilities, the co-ops, to also develop a community benefits plan. And so this plan is to ensure that the project that the federal government is funding through the New Era program draws on some of those diversity, equity, and inclusion priorities of the administration, the Justice 40 goals, so making sure that these benefits are flowing to historically disadvantaged communities, as well as writing some workforce and labor benefits into that program. So that's New Era. Another exciting program is the PACE program. And in this case, PACE stands for the Powering Affordable Clean Energy program. not property assessed clean energy, which is an existing program. So just to make sure that there's no confusion there. And PACE provides $1 billion for utilities to build, and other entities to build new clean energy. So this is, again, utility scale wind, utility scale solar, those kinds of projects. Electric cooperatives are eligible, but they're not the only entities that are eligible. A municipal utility, so like your city-owned electric provider, might be able to apply, as well as private sector developers could apply for up to $1 billion in these, for some of the $1 billion in this program, which provides forgivable loans. I think the typical range for these loans will be 20 to 50%. Can be forgivable, and for certain qualifying projects can get up to 60% of that loan forgiven. So that's a pretty exciting opportunity for some of these more cash-strapped rural electric utilities. Another thing I want to note here is that applicants also are required to include a community benefits plan. So this is, again, just to make sure that these projects are actually responding to community needs. And the PACE program applicants will be scored on their community benefits plan. So, there's an opportunity here for cooperatives and communities to collaborate on something that will be beneficial to the utility, to the clean energy goals of the community, et cetera. So again, the timelines for application are coming up fast. For PACE, you have to apply by the end, or beginning in June. So June 30th is when the application portal will open. And then USDA is expected to start making awards in September of 2023. So September of this year. PACE is not competitive. USDA will process these applications on a rolling basis. So that's, lots of incentive to get started on an application now. But if, it's not like utilities will be competing against other utilities. So the program will run until the money runs out. So that's PACE. Another program is the Rural Energy for America program, and there's now $2 billion in this program, which is also administered by USDA. This is an existing opportunity that just received a big boost of funding in the Inflation Reduction Act. So the primary goal of REAP, as it's known, is to help reduce the energy costs for small businesses like ag producers or other small rural businesses, including rural electric cooperatives. So again, this is an opportunity that you are going to want to make sure that your co-op knows about. The types of things that REAP can fund include new solar projects, so new wind projects, as well as some energy efficiency, and the amounts are listed here on the slide. REAP is competitive by state. And there are some key deadlines coming up. So at the end of June, if you've got a really big project that you want USDA to fund through REAP, you're going to want to get that application in right away. So that's for projects costing over $20,000. And then for any size project, you have a couple of application windows closing in September, December, and March. So there's a little bit of a longer application turnaround for REAP. With that, I'm going to turn things over back to Bree to talk about another new exciting opportunity from the federal government.
And I'll go a little more quickly this time. So in addition to the programs that we just talked about that the USDA Rural Utilities Service is administering, electric co-ops now have access to direct pay tax credits for the first time for the solar power that they produce or invest in. And so there are a lot of tax credits available that could result in a huge discount on their project costs. And most of these tax credits will stack in some way with the programs that we just mentioned. So there's a main investment tax credit that could get the co-ops 30% off their project costs. They just have to meet labor standards and manufacturing standards. Then there's another 2 bonus credits that can stack on top of that 30% credit. So one, if they're in an energy community or doing a project in an energy community where there's been former coal mines or power plants, you can get a credit. And then also there's another domestic manufacturing credit for steel components that are manufactured in the US. So you can get both of those on top of the 30, possibly. And then there are 4 possible low-income communities bonus credits that they could be eligible for. They could get one of those credits on top of the others that we mentioned. And so there are different options for credits there that have different values depending on if that project meets certain requirements for providing benefits to low-income residents. Okay, next slide, Emily. So for some co-ops, if their project really checks all the boxes for the possibilities with those credits, they could get up to 70% of their project costs reduced just through those tax credits, which is pretty incredible. If you pair that with the other opportunities through the funding programs, they can just really get some good money for building these projects. How they can access them, it's going to be some form of a direct payment, probably through a reimbursement. So they'll have to have their money up front, and then they'll get a reimbursement from the IRS sometime later. There is currently a notice in the Federal Register where the IRS has been developing the final rules for the low income bonus credit program. That comment period is still open, so we should get more guidance on how they can get access to these credits later on this year. So again, just more big opportunities through the tax credits. Okay, Emily, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Brie. So now we're going to move into talking about how you can engage with your cooperative's leadership on these opportunities. So we've developed a couple of resources in collaboration with partners at the Rural Power Coalition, which is a national coalition of organizations who have been fighting to get this money made available to cooperatives for the past year or so. And so we've made a template letter, and I'll share these links with everyone after the webinar, where you could just, modify the letter to include your name, the name of your cooperative, and send that letter to your cooperative's leadership or the executives staff at your co-op to say, here are these 4 exciting opportunities. This is a lot of money. This will help, your cooperative transition to clean energy quickly and affordably. Please take advantage of this. And then we've also developed a 4-page fact sheet, which includes some of the material from these slides with a little bit more detail that you could share with the cooperative as well, just so they can kind of get an idea of what these programs are if they're not familiar with them or haven't had time to dive in to them. So that's what we've got for member owners like you. And then for cooperatives, there's also a lot of resources that are being made available, some from USDA, some from nonprofit organizations that want to help, that they want to see this money get distributed to rural utilities. And so USDA has electric general field representatives in every state who are able to talk to the cooperative about how to apply to help answer technical questions and assist them in that process. And again, we have their contact info available, and I'll share it with everyone after this webinar. And then other organizations include the Rocky Mountain Institute, which can provide technical assistance to cooperatives to help them make that clean energy transition, as well as the National Renewable Energy Lab, which has a new program called the Clean Energy to Communities program, which can do the same thing, provide some of that technical assistance to these cooperatives to make sure that they apply. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a moment, and then I'm going to walk everyone through what it might look like to go to your cooperative's website to try to figure out how you can get this information to leadership there. So as Bree mentioned earlier, co-ops are governed by boards of directors, and then there's other staff like a CEO often, and other folks who are making leadership decisions and guiding the future of that utility. And so those are the folks that you want to reach about these programs. And hang on, let me share my screen again. Okay.
And Emily, while you do your this screen share, you might try turning your camera off to help with the
okay.
You're just a little bit.
Yeah, sorry. Is that better? Okay, thanks. So I picked this website because Rappahannock Electric Cooperative is a really big cooperative utility in Virginia, and I'm in Virginia, and I think they have a really nice navigable website. So I thought it would provide a good example for what to look for when you're trying to make that connection with your cooperative. So I went to their website, I clicked on the My Cooperative tab, and then there's this leadership button, and you can see that you can click on the board of directors page. That takes you here. Let's see. Oh, I lost it. Oh gosh. Okay, sorry about that, y'all. I think I'm feeling a little. Oh, Brie, I can't hear you. Oh, communicating with the board. Here we go.
Yeah, so y'all, Emily's trying to show you how you can find information for reaching your board of directors on your co-op's website. And we just saw Emily kind of struggled a little bit to get to this page. I think, as you said, Emily, Rappahannock has a pretty good navigable website with information on it. Some co-ops have very little information on their website, and you may not be able to find a list of your board of directors or a way to contact them. So this is a good example of when the info is available. I'll pass it back to you, Emily.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Reed. That's a good point. So here, just to show you, they have a submission form. You could copy and paste that letter into kind of the section there. And then, these co-ops also have regular board meetings, and the board meetings aren't always open to the public. Sometimes they are. Sometimes you can find other ways to communicate with the board. In the case of Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, the meetings are not open to member owners, but you can request to attend. So you would go to this page. You have to read and agree to their decorum policy, and then you can try to sign up to speak at the next meeting, and they have the list of meetings here. So if we just so happen to have anyone from Rappahannock Electric Cooperative with us tonight, you can see that their next board meeting is June 28th. That's 2 days before the PACE application portal opens. So it'd be a great opportunity to try to speak at that meeting and let them know you want them to pursue these federal funding opportunities. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and hopefully we can now transition to questions about these opportunities from you all.
And Emily, I'll just add, for folks who want to reach out to their co-op leadership about these opportunities to find out, hey, is my co-op going to apply? Or just to share information with them about the opportunities. I will say many small distribution co-ops are, the smaller ones especially, are busy running their utility, and they may not be as plugged in to these opportunities. So there's a good chance that you could be taking this information to them for the first time. And so I think it's good to look for board members to reach out to, but also consider some of the higher level staff, like the general manager or the CEO of the co-op, as well as, there might be some other folks who are right below the CEO that are good to reach out to. You could possibly contact both at once. And remember, you are a member and an owner of your co-op if you pay an electric bill there. And so, participating in the co-op is something that you should absolutely think about trying to do. So sorry, and didn't mean to jump in front of folks who might have questions. Yes, if anyone who is participating has questions about any of the information we shared, please feel free to raise your hand or come off mute.
And in case, y'all are still sitting there coming up with a question just while we wait, I did pop a link to the template letter that you can send to your board and leadership at your cooperative in the chat, as well as a link to the 4-pager that I referenced that has a little more detail about each of these programs that you can share with your co-ops too. All right, I see we have a question from Seth in the chat. He asks, what's your sense of whether many co-ops are planning to take advantage of these programs? That's a good question. I don't know. Bree, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I can say that I think Office of Management and Budget has estimated that there would be something around 250 applications to the New Era program. That's the $9.7 billion program that is specific to generation and transmission or distribution cooperatives. So, I think it's kind of hard to say. I know that USDA is trying really hard to help get the word out there about their programs. They're doing lots of webinars because they want to see applications coming in. Some of the funding for these programs is kind of at risk to being clawed back before the end of the year, like through the Farm Bill. So, there are different folks in Congress who are trying to take that money away and put it somewhere else. So there's a lot of impetus on USDA to try to get this program rolled out and get folks applying to it. So I think, I'm hopeful that there will be a lot of co-ops who apply, but I also think that what we talked about before is true, that especially on the distribution side, there may be a lot of distribution co-ops that don't know about these opportunities. So it's definitely good for member owners to talk to them. And then on the G&T side, I will say, I think USDA did a really good job of listening in the early phases of coming up with the program rules to try to make these programs really accessible for co-ops and for co-ops to be able to bring really innovative projects to the table and get them funded. So I certainly hope that some of those co-ops across the country who are kind of leading on the energy transition will be applying, and then others may take more nudging.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And Bree, thanks for the answer. Do we have any other questions from folks in the Zoom room? All right, well, seeing none, I will say that we are hoping to connect with anyone who's interested in, trying to work with their co-op to pursue these opportunities. So we're going to be sending a survey out to everyone who came to this webinar tonight or who registered to ask, have you had a chance to reach out to your cooperative? Did you share that material with them? Did you learn from them whether or not they are pursuing these opportunities? And so we'll be sending that out at the end of June. So please look for that from us. And in the meantime, I think I saw another question come in. This is a question from Jeff. Is there any guidance on when and how the direct pay will be instituted?
I think we're still waiting for final guidance on this. I mentioned when I was talking about direct pay, the low income communities bonus credits. There's 4 options for stacking one of those credits. There's actually a notice in the Federal Register out right now with what will probably become the final rule or the final guidance on that program, but it's open for comment. So I'm trying to remember the name of the organization that put together some really good guides on the direct pay tax credits and has been tracking developments there, but I'll go find it and put the link in the chat so that you have that resource, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks again for the question. Do we have any more while Bree looks for that link? All right, well, I just want to, oh wait, let's see. Seems that. So Beverly says, it seems that Democrat senators would be good candidates to push this information to encourage participation. So I'll just say, we've been engaging with as many members of Congress as we can about the importance of these programs and how they can benefit their rural constituents in particular. And, just are trying to emphasize that this money is important. It's going to be able to do good things for rural communities, and we hope that they, support it and don't take any of the money away or reduce any of the program's scope. And Bree, I don't know if oh, great. Okay, so Bree did put that link in the chat with information on the direct pay tax credits. So feel free to open that up. We can send it again in the follow-up email that I'll share afterwards, which again will have a copy of our slides, some of the links that were shared in the chat tonight, and then our contact information in case you have questions that come later and would like to follow up with us about these opportunities. So Bree, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Nope, I don't think so. I guess just, if any of you are a member of a co-op and you want to help share information with your distribution co-op or your GNT, your distribution co-op's generation and transmission electric co-op, please let us know. We're definitely around to help. And like Emily said, we'll send around a survey. If y'all end up talking to your co-op, we'll try to send around a survey to see who's reached out and who gets any traction with that work.
Oh, and you know what, Bree? I did see some interesting questions come in to the chat just now. Do you want to take a few minutes to try to answer these?
Yeah, it's in the chat. Okay, let me see.
Okay.
Okay, this is from Nancy. I was interested in possibly creating a small scale co-op in a community that mainly has traditional electricity providers. Is there anything that falls within this as an IRA opportunity? Isn't there is some kind of co-op accelerator program, right? Do you know about that one, Emily?
No, sorry. But I would think that PACE potentially the PACE program could potentially fund a project like that, right? It's as long as some of the program recipient or the benefits of the program are the project are primarily rural.
Yeah, and there is like a specific funding opportunity for like a co-op accelerator. I'm gonna see if I can find that and put that on the chat. And then this from Angel. This webinar was recommended by a professor for a Master's of Social Work program. I imagine social workers could help to advocate for and educate people about these programs, but also the co-ops themselves. Any ideas or suggestions for someone new to such a role? Emily, do you want to take that while I go find that program info?
Sure. And sorry, I was responding to Beverly in the chat there. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think, something you could do if you are not a co-op member yourself, but you know people who are, would be to share information about these programs with people, people who are members of co-ops so that they can get that information in front of their cooperative leadership. Not all of these programs are for co-ops. So REAP and PACE and the direct pay tax credits are, they have a wider eligibility range. So if you know of another type of utility that serves a rural population, at least in part, or of, a clean energy developer, or maybe have an idea for a project yourself, or like you're maybe a rural business that wants to try to take advantage of these programs to reduce energy costs. Like those are the kinds of people that I think would really benefit from this information, and just knowing that these programs are out there and it's a lot of money that they could be applying for. So yeah, just spreading the word far and wide is how I would answer that question. And then Beverly, I was just going to say, in terms of sharing information on social media, we do have Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're posting a lot on there about these opportunities. And then, I think a lot of the links that I'll share in the follow-up email, you can share on social media too. Oh, great. And Patrick, I see your note. You will be contacted in your co-op. We're so excited to hear that. Thanks for coming, and thanks for doing that.
Cool. Just Ben, seeing your comment about the renewable energy developer. So both the New Era and PACE programs also allow co-ops to use that money for purchasing power through a PPA or a third-party provider. So that's something for you to keep in mind if you work for that company that you just mentioned, or if you are in contact with them, is that there's good opportunities for those types of partnerships with this funding. Cool. Well, I was not successful in finding that accelerator program that I mentioned, but I know I will find it before the end of the night, and I'll try to get back with Jeff, was whoever else asked that question.
Yeah, it was Angel Mac, and I can note that down. So Angel will make sure we get that information to you.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Well, thanks y'all for joining us tonight. Excited to see so many folks excited and interested in these programs as well. And we look forward to hearing from you at the end of the month on what you're hearing from your co-ops. So thank you.